Hello, and welcome to Sobercast. We provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast format. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into the virtual basket. Also, if you're a member of NA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, NAPOD. NAPOD features NA speakers and workshops in the same format as Sobercast. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for NAPOD, N-A-P-O-D, all one word, on any podcast player app, or go to napod.xyz if you'd like to listen online. Hope you enjoy the podcast and have a great day.
My name is Alex, and I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober since July 4th, 2001. For that period of time, I'm extremely grateful. It's funny. My name is Alex, if you heard it right. I come from a long line of very selfish people. If you spend any time at all around me, you would see that. I'm in the right place. I often think of my great ancestor, thinker self, the guy who sat for that. I know how that guy felt, and I'm certain that he was my ancestor. I mean, I see my ancestors up on a hill just spending time in their head, just trying to figure it out. And I know I've spent a lot of time there myself, being a self. And it's so wonderful to hear laughter. I love my home group. I spoke in a group a couple weeks ago. And I was talking to my friend Steve T was there from our group, and I said, Steve, I thought I was going to kill him. I had some really funny lines, and all I heard out there was crickets. And he said, don't worry, Alex, it wasn't that you weren't funny, it's just because no one was listening. And I said, it's like, all right, Steve, thanks a lot. The sensitivity thing goes away in the second year, I assure you, man, no problem. But I'm just so glad to be here in my home group tonight with my family. My beautiful wife Robin's here, and so glad that she's here with my family. And my wife's an Al-Anon, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm just so grateful that there's a place for us to go to recover as a family. I know a lot of places. I hear Vinoy talk a lot about. They just as soon as shoot us as let us sit in their meeting. I just can't believe that. I mean, I don't know why. If I'm any better than her, I'm like a scumbag of the highest order. I mean. My wife, God bless her, she's just like a loser magnet, She she can't help it, Her father was an alcoholic, her first husband's an alcoholic, and I'm an alcoholic. She just really knows how to pick them, I thank God that she's found some place where she can recover, and I never realized that her disease is as deadly as mine. I mean, I thought that it was like, I'm an alcoholic. My job is to think about me and what I'm doing, and she's an Al-Anon, and her job is to think about me and what I'm doing, and I couldn't figure out. I could never figure that out. I mean, I spend just long periods of time just thinking of nobody but myself. I'm a driver. I drive down the road a lot, and I'll just sit there, and I'll be like 3 hours, and I think, man, I got a wife and I got kids. I get so ashamed of myself because I don't even think about them. I'm just driving and me, and it's hell, And I thank God that there's a place where I can come where I can just have that arrested, albeit for a small amount of time, As soon as I come back, my grand sponsor talks about it, He comes here and it's like, he gets what he needs, and he walks out the door, and it's like he's a resentment magnet, like this suit, just these things just coming. Or he can go to bed and feel good, and the next morning it's like someone just comes during the night and just pumps him right in the rump full of selfishness, I mean, he could be selfless at the meeting, but then as soon as he leaves, and I understand that because it's just, it's just crazy being an alcoholic. I'm just so grateful that I know what I am today. I mean, for a long time I didn't, and I hear from behind the podium people talk about they never felt comfortable in their own skin, and they didn't feel quite right, and I relate to that certainly. But I heard a tape by Clancy the other day. It was from Norman in 1981, and I think I hear Susan's laughter in the background. I'm sure Susan's laugh, I can always peg it wherever tape I'm listening to. You can hear that laugh, and she's usually in the front row. But he says, he says that he's a thinker and a feeler, and I am definitely that. My whole life I've been a thinker and I've been a feeler. I've just always felt, just seems like I've just felt things, I've always put on this I don't know, it's like a suit of cockiness or confidence, and it's all just a facade, because I'm a sensitive person, and I don't like people to know that I'm sensitive, but I truly am, and it's just little things, like, why did she look at me that way? I don't understand. She must hate my guts. I never even did anything to her. I don't know why she hates me. And I can just spend days, and next time I see this person, and it's getting worse. She looked at me even worse this time, and then I'll come and talk to that person later on and say, did you really hate me as much as I did? And say, what? I didn't even know who you were to introduce yourself about 5 minutes ago, But I think that, it's always all about me. Man. Everything's about me, and I certainly know that you guys understand that. But I'm supposed to tell you in a general way what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. I was born in 1968 in the great state of Texas, in San Antonio, and I spent about 5 minutes there and moved to Southern California. And I grew up about 20 minutes from Disneyland. It's about, in Orange County, California, it's about 3 hours from Mexico. And the neighborhood I grew up in was a really bad hippie neighborhood, is about the only way I could describe it. And there was a lot of long-haired guys getting loaded on a lot of things. And I remember playing in the gutter in front of my house, and we played with hypodermic needles, like with squirt guns. Me and my brother would shoot each other, and that's just the kind of thing it was growing up. And we used to see a lot of things going on, just like bloodbaths. The junkies, the Larley brothers beating themselves over each other's heads with bicycles. It's my bike, no, it's your bike, and just an ambulance coming. These guys just walking around, their eyes out of their socket. And I didn't know what. I guess that was alcoholism, and growing up, I didn't know that. I had a brother named Mike who I knew was an alcoholic. I didn't know what an alcoholic was then, but this guy drank an awful lot of wine, and he sure smelled funny, He didn't even try the old mouthwash trick. He just drank and openly drank. He'd be these big gallons of Gallo wine, and he used to get in a lot of fights with my dad. And I remember my dad would, when we were little kids, he would say, he'd give me and my brother a lamp. He'd say, when Mike comes in, if he starts anything, I want you to hit him over the head with this lamp. My dad was really old when he had me. My dad was 65 years old when I was born. I was the last of God knows how many kids he had. I don't even know. My dad was married, I think, 6 or 8 times. He was born in 1904, so there's no records. My mom is this little, you might remember when my mom came, she's this little bitty Mexican lady. It's like my dad is like 6'4", 260. My mom's a little bitty Mexican lady. So I'm about as half-breed as they come. I'm like right down the middle. My dad's like John Wayne and my mom's Charo, and and out came Self, and I was the last kid born, and I don't know. I have my oldest sister. I went to go visit my father's grave around my birth. My mom came down, and I had a chance to make amends to my father. I mean, the only way I could was to write him a letter and put it on his grave, and I prayed. And I got to see my oldest sister's grave, and she died in like 1922, I think. She died of appendicitis before they even had a cure for appendicitis, or they didn't even know what to do about it. I mean, she had appendicitis. You died back then if you had it. And she'd probably be 80-something right now. My dad was 83 when he died, but I don't have really any complaints about growing up. I mean, I was very loved. I was my dad's favorite kid, and my mom was kind of like my brother was her favorite kid, and they loved us, and we had everything we could ever want. If the washing machine broke, they'd get a new one. The fridge broke, they'd get a new one. The car broke, they'd get a new one. There was always food in the fridge, and they loved us. We played Little League, and I went to school and got good grades, and things were looking up. I was actually, believe it or not, I had a lot of potential when I was a kid. I was kind of like I was the smartest, I was the dumbest kid in the smartest class. I just made it over the fringe where I could get into, the class with all the geeks, I'd be in class with like these kids, they were like Poindexters, and I felt like once again, I was just so cool. I mean, I was terrified because I wasn't as smart as these kids, but I could put on that facade of, at least, I could might be able to get a girlfriend. What are you going to do, Frankenstein? You might be able to finish your test first, but but I was terrified. I was a fraud, and whenever I would try to get a chick, God forbid she would reject me, because I would just go into just this pit of just self-pity, And that's just the way I lived my life when I was a little kid. There was always something wrong with me, and I never knew what it was. I mean, it just, like I said, I was a thinker and I was a feeler. I just seemed like everything I felt, I just magnified, and I would just be in my head constantly, And I guess it was I don't remember when it was I had my first drink. I was probably about 12 years old, and I remember, so we just got some beer. And we got a 6-pack of Mickey's and a 6-pack of Killian's and just a smorgasbord of this beer, and we just started drinking. And I don't remember exactly, like I said, the day or the night or whatever, but I remember drinking and it was like, man, why would anybody not want to do this? I mean, it's just, I took this drink and it's just all my worries just went away. And all these girls I was afraid to talk to, I could talk to. And all the guys I was afraid of that, I could just talk to, and we'd laugh and carry on into the night. And it was just like, I really relate to Bill's story. It's like I had arrived. I was a really young kid, and I remember my dad sitting me down, before this, back up a little bit. I remember sitting down in our front yard after my brother Mike had ripped off our TV and split, and him and my dad had gotten into a fight I didn't see, but he was kind of bloody and he had a broken hand. And I remember sitting down in our front yard, and he made me promise him, Alex, promise me that you'll never drink. He said you'll never sniff glue, is what he asked me to do. I still haven't sniffed glue yet. I guess that's the one thing I could say I haven't done. But I took that first drink, and it just seemed like everything just fell into place. I just wasn't nervous anymore. And I took to it just like, bam, it wasn't, I didn't just have a drink, and I hear people talk about, then several years later I had a drink. I had a drink and just kept drinking, I was drinking right away, like, it seemed like every weekend, I'd go to school, and then I just kind of quit going to school. And then we would ditch school and drink and do all the other things. And I remember when I was in high school, we had really lofty aspirations as kids. Some kids are trying to figure out what college they're going to go to, or if they're going to be a professional this or that ball player, And my goal for the day was to get $8.17. It was $5 for a nickel bag and $3.17 for a 12-pack of Schaefer beer. And that's what we did every day. We'd pull our school money together. We'd rip off money from the mom's slender purse, whatever it was, to get that $8.17 so we could get our groove on, That's all we did. And from a very, very early age, before I was even 15 years old, I remember I was fully addicted to drugs and alcohol. That's what my neighbors did. That's what my brother did. That's my mom and dad. They didn't, but that's what we did. Everyone in our neighborhood did that. I don't know why anyone would not want to do that. From being a nervous wreck to just being, in the in crowd. There was no choice for me. So I just went on and did this, and it just got worse, And I remember I dropped out of high school. They quit telling me I had potential, because I quit going to school altogether. I quit playing sports, and I ended up living in my mom's garage. I think I was about 16 or 17 years old, and I like to hear Scott Johnson talk about living in his mom's garage. It was like a paradise for me. I had an old rug I put in there and threw my mattress on the floor and had a little TV in there, my own separate entrance, I'd go get my stuff and hop the fence and go in my room and just sit in there and drink. And about this time, I started working as a mover. I'm a furniture mover, and it was a great job for me, because we could go and pack up people's stuff, and that we would just tell them things like, we can't pack your alcohol. It's against the law. You can't transport it in a truck. We'll be glad to take it with us. And I would just take home gallons of vodka and just go to the garage, and I'd just sit in the garage and just, and I like Brian, whatever, from Canyon Conference. That guy was so funny. I had my own pair of foddy shorts, and I'd sit in there and put on the foddy shorts, and I would drink my vodka, just drinking straight vodka in there, and just entertain myself. I had my dog. That's all I needed. Me and Bluto, my dog. We sat in the garage, and then I got ripped, and Bluto would kind of look at me with that sideways dog look, and I would just get hammered in there, and I would just surface. I'd go to work. I'd come home with my vodka, and I'd go back in the garage. And it was kind of a strange thing because, other people's lives were kind of taking off. People were going to college and getting married and doing all these things, and there I was. I'd go to work and come home and lived in my garage. And like I said, I was a mover, and we started hitting the road. And on one of these road trips, we happened to go through Denver, Colorado, and I met a girl in a bar there, a little bar called the Horseshoe, and a truck stop bar, believe it or not. And it's funny. It's a funny story because I was sitting there doing my thing, getting ripped, and this girl just came out of nowhere. This big girl came out of nowhere. She scared me, and she said, my friend really likes you. And I was like, thank God, your friend. It was the scariest thing because she came up and grabbed me very inappropriately. I hadn't even met the girl, and she's like, hey, and I was like, whoa, and she just scared me to death. And she says, my friend really likes you. She wants to meet you. I said, whoa, all right. I hadn't been with a girl. By this time, the girls, anything like that, I just wanted to just get ripped. I could care less. The whole rejection thing, I didn't want to even deal with it. If you don't like me, well, guess what? I hate you even more. That was my thing. And she says, my friend really likes you, and she wants to meet you. And so she brought me over to Robin. And we sat and we talked, and I, she started asking me questions, and I started lying. And I remember she asked me, do you drink much? And I said, oh, no, just once in a while. And she said, well, do you do drugs? Oh, no, I never touched this stuff, And I was just lying my butt off, and we hit it off really well. And it it's funny thing, came to find out, I was the wrong guy. She liked my friend, and I guess her friend was drunk or something, and she came and got me. I was the wrong guy. And if this drunken woman had grabbed the right guy and brought her to Robin, you'd probably have a different speaker here tonight, because I probably wouldn't have met her. And I've been following around Robin for a long time, and so we hooked up, and I went to her house and stayed the night. I mean, couldn't believe such a good girl like her would be so forward like that, but we spent the night, and I took off and went back to California, and we just kept in contact. We were writing, and she had two little girls, 3 and 4-year-old girls. And I remember the next day when she was driving me back to my friend's truck, and I remember sitting next to April, young April. She was like 3 or 4 years old, and I remember she was sitting next to me, and she looked at me, and then she looked at her mom, and she said, Mom, he stinks. And then she looked back up at me, and she looked at her mom and said, he really stinks. It was my first resentment against April. And she went and dropped me off at my truck, and I took off, and we corresponded. We wrote letters back and forth. And I remember one time, it wasn't too far after that, I had went on one of my sprees, which was a nightly occurrence. It's just what I did. I mean, there was no room for anything else in my life but getting loaded. It's all I did, day in and day out. And one time I was particularly drunk one night and had to go get some of those outside issues. And I ended up buying a rock of self-pity off a cop, and I thought it was entrapment, but I couldn't prove it in a court of law, so they threw me in jail. And I remember writing to Robin and telling her, I don't know, for whatever reason, I think it was kind of maybe a bottom for me, and I was really going to change. And I told her, Robin, I'm in jail, and I lied to you all along. I'm a hopeless drug addict. I'm an alcoholic. I bought a rock off a cop, and I'm sitting in the slammer right now. And I remember, that was it. I was going to change my life at that moment. I started taking parenting classes in the jail, and I started going to AA meetings in there, and started writing her stuff like, oh, we're going to do wonderful things like go to museums and art shows and, all these things I wanted to do, but I could never get out of the dang garage to go do them, I had always fancied myself type of an intellectual, and I liked movies and the finer things in life, but I just couldn't get out of the garage to engage in any of the activities I wanted to. But sure enough, as soon as I got out of jail, there was a plane ticket waiting for me, just Miss Robin sent me a plane ticket. It's like I guess she must have believed me or something. It's the strangest thing. And I had enough of California. California was just bad news for me. If I could just get out of that dang state and away from all them rotten drug addicts and alcoholics, and I can finally be this person I want to be. And so I moved to Denver, Colorado. And the sad thing about Denver, Colorado is they have all the same things they have in Orange County, California. And it didn't take me long at all to find out where all the bad things were. And I remember one night, it was New Year's Eve, and I so sad. We were out dancing, and she was so happy. We were drunk, and my mind was going. My mind, it's just a one-track mind. Once I take that first drink, I can't stop. And she didn't know anything about this, and she didn't know anything about me. And as soon as she took off to the bathroom, she did the fatal mistake of leaving her keys on the table. And she hit the bathroom, and I hit those keys, and bam! And I took off in her car, and went and found the things I was looking for. And poor Robin, she walked home, and I brought home. I remember bringing home this. I don't know whether it was a man or a woman. I just remember her name was Nene, and me and Nene came back. Well, the thing was, I had ran out of money, and I knew Robin had a little bit of stack left, and me and Nene thought we could talk Robin out of some of her money, and Robin had different ideas. And I remember she got Nene in her car and took her off to whence she came, and that was just one of just many things that I had been with Robin. I've been with Robin now almost 9 years. 9 years. And I've been sober for 1 year, so that can kind of tell you what's you guys know that the story of our life. Glad to see Hank here. Hank talks a lot about getting that finger, and I used to get that finger from Robin, but it was usually a different finger, if you know what I mean. She was so nice and kind to me at first. She was just like, it was like I left my mom and moved in with my mom, and she took care of me. And I'd come back from a bender, and she'd be like, "Well, baby, are you hungry?" "Sure, go get me some chicken, or go get me some tacos," or whatever. And she used to kind of mother me. But after, getting burned so many times, she quit doing that, and things started to get nasty. I mean, I remember I'd be gone, it's like Dave, man, he akins me to, you remember that book, Where's Waldo? He said, that was kind of me. Where's Alex? See if you could find Alex in the hood somewhere, And she would go looking for me. Robin would go off on missions, and she'd go look for me, off in the hood, some scary places. And it's funny because I remember April, she used to be really into, rap music, and she liked Tupac and Usher and all these guys, and, she used to really jam to it and talk about the hood. And then one time Robin took April to go pick me up, and she said, it's like Robin's like, "Roll them up, girls, roll them up." And April said, "Mom, is this the hood?" Robin said, "Yes, April, it is." She says, "I don't like the hood." And she would find me, and most of the time she'd find me just to tell me she never wanted to see me again, She'd go for days. I would just be gone for days and days, and I'd just show up. I'd be out of money, and I'd show up at the front door, and I didn't know what Alcoholics Anonymous was at that point, but I remember just taking the first step on her doorstep, just, "Baby, please, if you just let me back in, I'll devote my whole life to recovery, and I'll never do it again." And she'd just be like, "Okay," and she'd let me in. And with promises of going to meetings. Her dad's an alcoholic, and he's been sober now for 16 years, I believe, and almost 16 years. And he had gotten sober in a treatment center and did the steps, and she started to tell me about her dad. My dad's an alcoholic, and I started working for her dad, and he would tell me, "Alex, you got to do something about what you're doing." It's bad enough that I was doing it to his family, but he understood what I was, and I didn't know what I was. So along this time, I started going to meetings in Denver, and it wasn't like this in Denver. I remember after one of my debacles, one of my self-imposed crises, I came home, and actually it was I don't know if any of you remember, her father-in-law was here on my birthday, and he told a story about one time I was working for him, and I got my paycheck on a Thursday. I don't know why they'd paid us on Thursdays. It's not a good day for an alcoholic to get paid, because you got to go to work on Friday, And I got paid and went to go get a little something during lunch, and I took a drink, I took a drink. I got a 40 ounce of some malt liquor, and I took a drink. And that was it. It just set off the terrible cycle in motion. And needless to say, I didn't make it back to work. I didn't make it back to work the next day. I didn't make it back to the house for the whole weekend. And he was selling me a car that it belonged to him. And I was paying for it. And I probably had paid $100 out of $1,000 maybe. And he was looking for his car. And it was the strangest thing. I remember pulling up into the apartment. I remember saying that prayer, driving home on the freeway, and just screaming and just crying my eyes out, and just with every fiber of my being, I meant the prayer. God, please help me. God, please make it stop, because I couldn't stop. I wanted to stop. I wanted to stop hurting the people that I claimed to love, but I just couldn't. I didn't know how. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know why. As soon as I took a drink, these terrible things just seemed to happen to me. And I remember pulling up in the driveway. And it just seemed like as soon as I pulled up and went in and shut the door, it seems like the car just got in reverse and whoop, just pulled out of the driveway. And Robin took off with my car, and then her dad magically showed up and said, Alex, we can do this two ways. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. He goes, you need to get your stuff and get out. And he said, if you remember, it was one of the saddest things he'd ever seen, because it took me all of about 3 minutes to get all my worldly possessions together. And I'm walking down the street with the glad bag, like Mike calls his Irish luggage. I'm walking down the street. I guess would be my Mexican luggage down the street, And I made it around the corner to my friends, and I called Robin. I said, Robin, I'm tired of it. I want to stop. I'll go to a meeting. I remember that night going to my first meeting at Alcoholics Anonymous in Wheat Ridge, Colorado at the Alano Club, and just walking up these stairs, and I was scared to death, and I walked through the door, and it was a smoke-filled room, and there was a lot of old men, and I thought, finally I can stop. Finally I can be free of this terrible curse, And I remember this old guy came up to me, and he gave me a 24-hour medallion. It was a medallion. I thought it was the coolest thing. It wasn't a piece of plastic. It was actually a sober medallion, and he said, kid, I want you to put this in your mouth. And if it melts, then you can take a drink, he told me. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool, And I went home and took a drink, I didn't even put it in my mouth. I just went home and took a drink, because it just, I sat there and I saw a bunch of old guys smoking cigars, and I guess they were sober. I didn't even know what sober was. Still didn't know what was wrong with me. It was just kind of a place for old timers, I guess, to get together, and I don't know what they were doing in there, but I wasn't ready is what was wrong with me, and so I just kept getting drunk, and there were some periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hope, it's like she happily saw that I meant business about 100 different occasions, where I'd go and get sober, undrunk for maybe a 2-week period. But I thought that if I could just quit drinking, then I could be okay. So when I'd be about 2 weeks without a drink, I'd just quit going to meetings altogether, It's like, well, I quit drinking, It's like it's all uphill from here or downhill from here, I can just be okay now, and I can play with the girls and go to parent-teacher conferences, and maybe get my ducks in a row, But alcohol didn't give a cluck about my ducks, is what I found out, I just got drunker and drunker, and it just seemed to get worse and worse. And by this time, Robin, she just had enough of me, and she just, you got to go, buddy, you got to go, get your stuff and get the heck out, She wouldn't let me in no more, and this was about the darkest period of my life. And I remember thinking, you know what, woman, screw you. Now I can finally go drink the way I want to drink, And to tell you the truth, I moved right into the hood, went to the hood where all my bros were. And pretty much became a crackhead. I lived in a crack house for a little while, and it was truly the darkest period of my life, where I had no job and I had no money, and I had a car for a period of time until one day the dope man came and he offered me some rocks and some beer money for my car, and it was too much. The madness that morning was so bad that I had to give it up. There was nothing else I could do. I had no solution, so I gave it to him, and I remember it was maybe 1 or 2 months later, walking down the road with my laundry. I had managed to go to a day labor place, and all I had were dirty clothes, and I had to get them washed. This particular day, I didn't take a drink. I went to the laundromat first, and I remember her dad had gotten into a horse accident that morning. They were going to go see him. They were driving down the road, and they saw me walking down the street with my bag, and a couple of the brothers, they knew I had money, so they were going to go help me wash my clothes until I got done with that. Then they could help me get loaded. And I remember we had a son by this time, And I remember April and Jonna and Christian and Robin getting out of the van, and I was scared. I thought she was going to, lay it into me, and I thought she was going to call me the names that I felt like, I was about a 30-year-old guy who had abandoned his children. I mean, I had become everything I despised in a man. That was me, and I thought she was going to get out of the car and just tell me how much she hated me, and I was going to say, if you hate me, you need to stand in line behind me, because no one hates me more than I hate myself. And that's the point I was. But she didn't do that. She got out of the car, and they all hugged me, and we all cried, and it was really a sad deal. And she took off to the hospital, and I went back to the crack house and just kept getting loaded and kept getting loaded. And at this point, I had enough and was living in a shelter. I finally got into a shelter, and I started going to different meetings in Denver, and I got serious about getting sober and found a group that I liked and ended up putting together a little bit of time. And Robin, being the wonderful person that she is, somehow we agreed to get married. And I had been sober about 8 months, and we were going to this church counseling, and I had quit going to meetings altogether. And it's the same my same pattern. I quit going to meetings, and the thought came to me as we were supposed to go to this church counselor deal. Our pastor was going to marry us, so we had to go to this church counselor session together. And the thought came to me, Alex, just have one drink. Just have one drink. This is going to be your last hoorah. It wasn't even going to be a last hoorah. I just wanted to go and get loaded for maybe 2 hours before I had to go to this church meeting, and it didn't work out that way. And I ended up getting loaded all night again. And, it's this, people talk about dying, and I don't want to die. And I don't know about that. I've never died before. I have no experience with death. But what the book talks about, the horror, hopelessness, and remorse of the next morning. And I know I have that one down pat. I remember just morning after morning of just sitting there with this terror gripping me and just pacing back and forth. What am I going to do now? And I knew I had blown it this time. I knew that this was it. And sure enough, I don't know what had happened, but I had managed to get my car back. And I remember there was a letter in my car, I think, and it was from my oldest daughter, Jonna. And it said, Alex, you really would have made a good dad. I believe that, but this has been too much, and now we're moving to Oklahoma. And that was truly the lowest period of my life. I had definitely thrown away everything good and decent in my life, and I was truly alone at this point, right where I needed to be. And I was working at Beacons. I was still a driver, moving furniture. And I remember I hooked up with this guy named Will. And Will was Will was kind of different. He wasn't like a crackhead brother. He was a really, he looked like a movie star, real tall guy, good looking, really intelligent, He was kind of an upper class guy. We still did the same things together, but he had all his teeth, and he didn't smell very bad, and he made it to work, and he was kind of, my friend Will is like, we got together and self-will ran riot, let me tell you. We would get paid. We would get paid on Fridays, and we would pull our money together, and sometimes we'd have like $1,500, and it'd be gone. Let me tell you, Saturday morning, it'd be gone. We would tear it up. And this went on, and Robin was asking for child support money, and she would, I'd talk to her every Thursday, and, baby, I promise, because I'd go to meetings after I'd spend all my money, and I'd get sober, and during the time, from Sunday to Thursday, I'd be a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then Friday would come, and she'd be waiting by the Western Union on Friday, and the money never came. And this went on for weeks, and I got so bad at this point that finally Will even gave up on me, and he just, I was too much for Will. He said, Alex, I've had enough of you. I can't deal with you anymore, man. You're too much. And I was seriously on kind of like a death wish, because my family was gone, my son was gone, and I was a bum. I was a drunken bum, and I lived like one. I lived in my car. I remember living in a truck stop. I'd sleep on Sundays. I'd go and I'd sleep in my truck, and I remember just hearing the rats behind me in the bushes, and I could see these big giant rats. They looked like possums, and they'd be skirting around the bushes, and I'd be scared, and looking at the rats, and I could take a drink, man, and it just the the terror would turn to just like I think of myself like in the Old West. This is what they must have felt like out in the chuck wagons, out in the campfires and stuff. And take a drink, my shoulders would go back and my chest would flare out. I'd say, man, this ain't so bad. What am I crying about? This is pretty cool, actually, living off the land out here like Clint Eastwood, and it would work until I would wake up, and then the madness would ensue once again. And my beautiful wife Robin, I ended up sending her some money, and we got to talking, and I got a little bit of sobriety strung together, and she agreed to let me move to Oklahoma with her. And I can't explain it, but she let me move in one more time, because this time for sure it was going to be different. And I quit my job and came to Tulsa and had a little bit of money and helped her with the bills and moved in with her. And of course I wasn't supposed to move in with her. I was supposed to come and get my own apartment, but you know how that goes. It save more money if we just move in together, And we ended up finally getting married, and I strung together a couple of weeks of sobriety. And I remember going to a group down in Broken Arrow, and it was the same group. I don't know, maybe the same people in Wheat Ridge, Colorado had moved to Broken Arrow, but it was the same deal, And I went to this group, and it was, people in there would just talk about traffic on the BA and how bad it was, and what their boss did to them that morning. And I was just sitting there, and I used to love topic meetings, Anybody got a topic for today? And if you yeah, self-pity, or anger. I used to love to pick the topic, and talk about my self-pity for an hour. And I knew for a fact that if I didn't do something quick, if something didn't happen to me quick, it was just going to be California, Denver, all over again in Tulsa. And so I wasn't working. I was kind of looking for a job. And I remember opening up the phone book and calling all the moving agencies in the phone book. And I called the Mayflower agent in Broken Arrow, and I said, I'm a mover, I'm a driver, I need work, I just need some money, and you got anyone? And they said, yeah. Actually, there's a lady who's moving in Broken Arrow tomorrow. Meet her, this is the address, meet the driver there. So I went to this house, and I remember seeing this girl walking from the house to the garage, and she had her car keys in her hand, and I saw on the car key a little sober medallion. And I said, wow. I said, are you a friend of Bill? And she said, yes, I'm a friend of Bill. And I said, well, how long you got? And she said, 3 years. And I said, well, I'm having a really hard time. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm having a hard time staying sober. I got about 2 weeks now, and I'm really getting scared because the heat's on, and I don't know if I'm going to make it. And she said, well, I know a place where you can go where you can get sober. And it's called the Going Any Lengths Group, and it's in Tulsa. And she says, I'm going to write down the address if you're serious about getting sober. Because if you're not serious, I got plenty of other groups for you to go to where you can go and just have fun and dance and do all the things you've been doing your whole life. But if you're serious about your sobriety and you really want to get sober, I'll give you this address. And I'm just like, give me that address, Jackie. And I'm serious. And I remember driving around. I had the address for a few days, and I remember driving around Broken Arrow, And it was bad this particular night. It was really bad, and I was going to drink. I had to drink. I had no choice. And I remember going to that meeting in Broken Arrow instead of drink, because I said, man, I don't want to drink, but I'm going to have to if this doesn't stop. And I remember going to that Broken Arrow meeting at 4 to 8, and it was locked, and the doors were closed. 3 to 8, 2 to 8, 8 o'clock, 8:05, and there was just no one there. It was in the booklet as a meeting at 8 o'clock, and nobody showed up, and I didn't know what to do. But I happened to have that address, and I looked at my little Tulsa map book and found out where 1314 South Peoria was, and took off. I remember I took 44 down to Peoria so I could take the long way instead of taking the BA. That'd take you off right there where you need to be. I took 44 and drove all the way out, wherever that takes you off, 51st or something, and drove the long drive down Peoria and showed up about 8:35. And I remember walking into the doors of the Going Any Lengths group, and it was this group that just had chairs all the way around. It wasn't what I was used to. I needed tables at my meetings, because if you got a table at your meeting, you would kind of just put your head down and weep, as people are speaking, or sleep, whatever, hits you. I can remember sometimes that they'd be saying the Lord's Prayer, and I had drool coming off my mouth, just like, And this group was different. I remember coming in, and there had no tables, and it went around, the chairs went around, and I sat in the door was there, and I sat in the last chair where mics at. and I just had basically 1 foot towards the door, and I came in socks and thongs and shorts and a big heavy coat and a hat, and I had a goatee. I looked around, and that's not what I saw. The people I saw were all clean shaven and dressed, and they spoke about recovery, and it was really freaking me out, man. I couldn't wait to get the heck out of there and tell you the truth. And I remember after the meeting, and we said the Lord's Prayer, and I was just going to leave, just shoot out the door, and I just got rushed by about 6 guys, It's like, hey, my name's Scott. How you doing? I remember Scott Johnson sat next to me. He's like, hey, man, I'm your temporary sponsor. And I'm like, say what? Man, I don't even know you. I need to get to know my sponsor and see how sensitive he is. I need someone who could relate to me, I don't even know you. And he said, this is my sponsor. And I remember David coming up to me. And I remember David looked kind of mean, I thought. And it was kind of a different deal. I remember I managed to get back a couple nights later, and they were having a men's prayer meeting over at Byron's that night, and they invited me to go. And we played poker till about 3:30 in the morning. We played poker till about, that they told me it was a prayers meeting. I didn't know. I needed some spirituality in my life. But I remember Boston Mike was there, and Byron was there, and Mickey was there, and we ended up, I did something I had never done. I decided to try and be a part of something, because I knew if I didn't, there was going to be trouble. And I was going to lose everything I had once again. Throw it away. Not lose, throw it away. But we ended up playing poker till about 3:30 in the morning that night. And I thought, man, this is different, and these guys are all right. I remember Byron. Man, Byron used to always tell me when I was brand new, in case no one ever told yourself, I love you, he'd tell me, I love you, and I'd always tell him about how I had to get up so early in the morning, and he'd look at me and just smile and say, I love you, Alex, he'd come back, and I never knew what that meant. Why did he always tell me that? He never told Mickey that, or Scott that, or anybody else. He loved me. And I remember going to a sponsorship meeting a couple nights after that. I remember Scott telling me, well, if you want me to be your sponsor, you'll be there. And once again, 8:30 came around, I showed up around 8:40, and walked in the door, and David asked me, well, what's your name? And I told him, what's your sobriety date? I don't know. Well, just take a guess. I told him, I don't know, and sat down. And I think about that now. What a punk I must have looked like, But I thought it was kind of a strange deal. I remember going home and telling Rob, they got some kind of cult deal going on over there, babe. I don't know what's going on. There's this guy sitting on this big chair. We're all on the floor over here. There's this guy over here in a big, comfortable chair, and he talks. We don't even get to share our experience, strength, and hope. It's all about who is that guy anyway, I didn't know nothing. I just remember thinking Dave had it really good, and people went and mowed his lawn. I thought, man, what is going? These guys are a bunch of schmucks, man. This guy is like a David Koresh or somebody, I don't know. But maybe we were all going to suit up and go to Waco or something, But it just really blew me away. But, one thing that I heard things, what blew me away is I heard things I'd never heard before, And I saw people that were involved and people that were staying sober. And instead of just walking away with, my stupid, petty judgments, that's all I do is judge people. My self-righteousness, I stayed, and when they went on a road trip, I got in the van and went with them. And it was a strange deal. They introduced me to the pecking order, and I didn't like that one bit, I was a professional driver, and they never let me drive on the road trips. I always had to sit in the back of the van, way in the back. When we ate, I was the last one to eat. What's your sobriety date? Oh, November 5th. Get in the back, buddy. Get in the back. Way in the back, And I got a lot of, I got involved, and I just, for the first time in my life, I felt sober, there were things going on, and I started to get involved. I started to enjoy coming, and at this point in time, my wife, they talk about Al-Anon-ism or whatever it's called, being deadly, and I could never understand that. It's like, what do you got to be whining about? I'm the one who's drunk. Look at my life. Look at me. Just look at me. And my wife. There were times in my earlier sobriety when Robin would cry. I'd be going to meeting after meeting, and I'd get home and she'd be crying. And she actually told me she thought about suicide, and I couldn't understand it because I was sober. It's like, baby, you said if I would just, she used to tell me all the time, if you would just get sober, everything. I say, you're full of it, Robin. If I got sober, you'd find something else to complain about, no matter what it was. And I'm a jerk. I guess I'm still a jerk. But, I just thank God that there's a place my wife can come, because now this is our group. This is my family's group. We come here to get recovery together. She doesn't stay at home thinking about killing herself, and I'm getting sober. I've been sober now for over a year, and there's been a lot of great things that have happened to me. I got a chance to make amends to my father. I got a chance to make amends to my mother. She came down here, and I actually bought her a plane ticket to come down here. Me, who's done nothing but steal from her my whole life, I bought her a plane ticket to come out here to see what goes on somebody's 1-year birthday. And she got a chance to see that her son's okay today. Her son, and that there's no greater gift I could give my mom. My brother is I believe one of us. He quacks like a duck and all that other stuff, and he lives with her with his kids, and she knows that I'm okay. And I just thank God for David and for Susan. I remember going out a little over a year ago. I went out. I had went to go enlarge my stack. I had to get my stack a little bit bigger. It was all about money. I was sober now. I could go make some money. It was time for me to move on. My boss was telling me this. Those people they've done for you what they could, man. It's time to move on. And I listened to him, and it took me 2 weeks, and I was down the street here in a motel on Admiral, crawling around the floor like an animal on July 3rd of 2001. And the next, that night, Robin went to a meeting and was crying to Susan. And Susan took her out and sat her next to Dave, and he explained to her the disease of alcoholism and told her, it doesn't matter, Robin, if he comes back or not. We want him to, and we welcome him if he does. But if he doesn't, you're always welcome here, and we'll scoop you guys up. And we'll you can stay with us. And for that, I'll just be internally grateful, that they just devote their lives to this. They give their lives for people like us, that we can come, and our life together was just, I can't describe the mess that our life was. There was no hope for my wife and me before we came here. There was nothing but just continued pain and misery, And thanks to a program called Alcoholics Anonymous and the Going in the Lengths group, we don't have to live that way anymore. And thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.